Welcome to the Pump and Dump channel. Today I'm to talk about Nordic American tankers, mainly because of this press release that came out on Monday. I bought some shares on Tuesday. Not going to really go into how much or at what price, lower than it is at now, but this video is just going to give an overview of the company, some valuation. Not really going to go into much detail on the valuation because it's a very leveraged stock that can move up and down quite a lot with the market. I'm just going to go over some of the driving factors in the stock at this point in time to give some insight of my experience looking at the tanker markets over the years, and then you can decide for yourself whether you want to invest or not invest. It's up to you. As mentioned in previous videos, I don't give you any advice or recommendation to buy or sell any securities, and it's up to you to decide whether you want to participate or not. So looking at this company, let's look at the market. They talk about it improving, its strong improvements. They mentioned the strong upward pressure on major Suezmax tanker routes, and then they talk about the ships, the market level for the ships that they are operating on has improved to more than 40,000 per day as of the start of this week. So this is of course the spot rate. If you go and check on some other websites, you can always find the charter rates, and the charter rates are lower than the spot rate at this point in time. I think they're around 26,000 or something like that. Of course, the spot rate, it usually reflects tightness in the market. So when there is actual tightness in the market, the spot rates rise above the charters, and in the bear market, when there's an oversupply, they fall below the charter rate. And that is kind of what this investment vehicle is all about. It's giving exposure to the tanker market where you can participate and you can trade. You can use this instrument as a proxy to trading the day rates. Of course, you have to make sure that the day rates that are existing at this point in time make sense on an investment basis if you want to hold it for a bit longer. Yeah, I'm just going to get now into the next point here, the operating costs. They say it's about 8,000 per day. If I pull up my calculator and I go to their Q2 report, you can see here they mentioned their voyage revenue, voyage expenses, operating expenses, G&A, and so on and so forth. And they have 23 ships, which you can see here, the 23 ships. And what it comes down to is that the reported cost is the vessel operating expense that you can see here, divided by 23, divided by, oops, I always do multiply for some reason. Let's do that again. There we go, divided by 23 and divided by 180. So they say it's about 8,000, and just the vessel operating expenses about 7,700. You can see the voyage expenses are much higher. In the annual report, you can see here that they say they are responsible for paying voyage expenses too. So including voyage expenses, operating costs, G&A, financing costs, and so on and so forth. Adding all of that together, you get to about 30 to 31,000, I think it was. And that's kind of where it's at. That's their operating cost. They're a true operating cost on a business perspective for each vessel. They had more vessels previously. They kind of leveraged up. They went all out and bought up to I think it was 35 vessels at one point, and then they sold 8 of them or so in the last 2 years, I guess it was. And that was kind of a failed strategy where they thought it was sort of like being a super cycle, and they wanted to get the maximum exposure to the upside, and it kind of went against them, and that's kind of why the stock price has done this here. So furthermore, in the press release, we can see here that they mention that the insiders, board members, and management bought $500,000 worth of shares. At first, you could think this is a pump and dump. This press release, they're trying to pump up the stock, showing that they bought some and get people to rally on and then sell into the strength. But given that it's an aggregate of 500,000 for board members and management, that is really a low amount historically compared to what they how much money they invested at much higher prices. I remember them putting in millions at 1050, and it was prior to the to the meltdown. So yeah, that's kind of where it's at. Um, just to underline why this vessel operating expenses, the true cost is much higher than what they report. You can just look at their earnings. They make loss consistently over the last 6 months. They would not have a loss if it was really $32,000 that they'd be making on each vessel per day. That's just a fact. What else can I talk about? Yeah, I'll just talk about the meltdown here, what happened. So in 2015-16, I remember they ordered some new Suezmaxes, 3 of them. They were delivered in 2018 around this time frame here. And of course, when they were built at first, the management was bullish. It was accretive at that point in time to purchase those assets. The market was at a high, and then the market rolled over and tanker rates went below 10,000. And all this way here, that was the house of pain, as Jim Cramer would call it. We saw here there was a short-term rally here when those new vessels were delivered. Those vessels were delivered and they came in with charters, 2 of them at least. One had a 3-year charter with 2 years options to extend, and the other one I think was 12 to 15, and the third one I'm not 100% sure, but I think it's on the spot market. Um, so yeah, going forward, spot rates below 10,000 here, and spot rates, as they say, above 40,000 over here. The share price is not moved. If you look, it's just a flat line. This is a bottoming pattern. If the chart, not the charters, the spot market recovers significantly, this would mark a basing pattern that would lead to a higher price. And that's kind of what I'm betting on, let's say, because nobody knows the future, but all the indicators I'm looking at kind of point to the possibility of there being a rally in these shares. And that is kind of key because we need to look at this from an investment perspective. I would argue that all this way here, the fair value for the shares would have been negative, and coming back here now, even though we're still at around the same share price, it's starting to turn positive. I would say that the stock is worth anywhere between 155 and 255 at this point in time. Major upside because of the operational leverage, given the 30,000 plus operating costs versus this 40,000 here. Financial leverage is also in the company because in the past years they had to borrow lots of money. I think they have 400 million in debt due to this bear market that they've been in just to stay afloat. The key thing is when I first got involved with this company, when I was a newbie investor, I looked at it and I saw it had virtually no debt. And that was kind of the driving force for me to really be interested in this company. And that's why I bought this company over other companies. Yeah, so looking forward and looking at the past, we can see similar developments at this point in time. What happened, of course, here, this rise, let's take the maximum chart. What happened from 14, let's say here, to 16 was that the oil price went from like 110 down to 25. And at this point in time, of course, whilst the price of oil was falling, the cost for the vessels was going down, and at the same time the demand for tankers was going up because the oil producers, they wanted to ship out as much oil as they possibly could as long as the price was still high. And eventually, the market started bottoming, and then speculators came into the game, and then they started chartering ships to hold oil. And the Suezmax can take about 1 million barrels. So if you assume like a $30,000 per day let's say charter hire on the on average, let's say for Suezmax, what a speculator could do is he could hire a Suezmax for 2 years, and let's just assume 30,000 per day, 365. You get to about 10, 11 million, and you do that for 2 years, and you purchase 1 million barrels that you put into this Suezmax at $30. So you basically putting 30 million into this operation for 2 years. So you've put in 52 million. And in 2018, as most people will probably know, the oil price ran to 75, and at any point in time above 52, they could have sold these barrels from the ship into the market and realized gains on the balance of the 1 million barrels that they bought. So that's kind of what speculators did. That's kind of what also helped drive the spot rate up. Of course, when the oil price started recovering and going higher, the demand from speculators fell off. It normalized, and then the oil producers, they were not in so much of a hurry anymore to ship out oil, and then we kind of got down to here. That's kind of where we are at. Now going forward, what do I see as a potential scenario? We see the central banks are talking about inflation being low, and supply of oil is growing, especially from the US. That is kind of the story, the narrative. We see kind of like here this basing pattern there, from 2012 to 2014, the same as we see from January 2018 to now. It's kind of a flat line here. And if we assume that because of the increase in oil supply from the US, that they would want to be shipping it out as quickly as possible in case the oil price keeps falling, we could see another rally in the tanker market, in the spot rate. And simultaneously, of course, when the oil price gets really low, we could of course see again speculators coming in, driving the rates up in a similar fashion as here. And on a technical basis, maybe it will take us back to 8, or maybe not. Maybe gets cut short at 4 or something like that. It really doesn't matter, but it doesn't really matter where it ends. But this is kind of the process in terms of knowing why to invest into a company like this or trade it, because ultimately what it comes down to is you are either right or wrong about your investment analysis and thesis, and when you make that decision to enter such a trade, you need to understand that if this subsides, this 40,000 per day, then this company is worth nothing. And I don't think they would survive another few years of a down market, given the fact that they had to borrow so much money, and that they operate on the spot market. So yeah, they also can't lock in rates, charters at this point in time, and just ride it out, because then the stock price will be low for the next many years. They kind of have to stay on the spot market to have a chance of regaining the levels that they previously had. And also the CEO, he has always said that over the long term, that the spot market has outperformed the charter rates market. So what's really basically happened here is, of course, their thesis of staying on the spot market, it proved very costly in this down market here. So that's kind of where it's at for now. That's what I think about Nordic American Tankers. I kind of like the CEO. He's a funny guy, but in terms of management, they have made the wrong judgment call back here to add more vessels. And instead of adding more vessels that needed 2 years to build, they should have instead been selling vessels and waiting for the point in time when the speculators who were chartering vessels to hope for a bounce in the oil price had been gone. Because that's kind of where it's at right now. There is no demand from speculators to purchase or hire vessels and purchase large amounts of oil and store them in hope of a rebound. And at the same time, the oil producers, they, well, at this point in time, of course, the oil producers are now scrambling to ship out more oil because the Saudi Aramco news, and there's uncertainty about when they're going to come back online. They say one thing, but the reality could be that they come back online earlier or they come back online later. And at this point in time, the oil producers around the world, they want to sell oil, and the only way to sell oil in the physical market is to hire some tankers and ship it out, and that is kind of the driving force in this stock at this point in time. So I'm going to leave it with that. Leave comments, subscribe if you want to be notified of any future videos I put out. That's all I have to say. Have a good day.